Deep inside a limestone cave on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, painted onto a wall almost 44,000 years ago, a group of figures hunts wild pigs and dwarf buffalo. Nothing strange about that on its own, except these hunters have snouts, tails, bodies that shift between human and animal in the same brushstroke. This isn't a mistake in the paint, and it isn't a child's doodle. It's the oldest known evidence that humans could imagine something that doesn't exist in the physical world at all. And it wasn't a one-off. Half-human, half-animal figures show up on cave walls across 4 continents, separated by tens of thousands of years and thousands of miles, with no possible contact between the people who made them. So what were they actually drawing? Archaeologists call these figures theanthropes, from the Greek words for wild animal and man. The Sulawesi hunting scene, found in the cave of Liang Bulu Sipong 4, dates to approximately 43,900 years old, and shows a group of these hybrid beings hunting pigs and small buffalo-like animals with spears or ropes. Researchers consider this the oldest pictorial record of storytelling, and the earliest figurative art discovered anywhere on Earth. Before this find, the oldest known theanthrope belonged to Germany's famous Lion Man, a lion-headed human figure carved from mammoth ivory. That figure, found in Hollenstein's Stadel, dates to roughly 38,000 BC, stands 31 centimeters tall, and depicts a lion head being standing upright on human legs, arms at its sides, staring directly at whoever looks at it. Scientific analysis of the tool marks shows it took roughly 400 hours of labor to carve, an enormous investment of time for a small hunter-gatherer community to spend on a single object with no practical use at all. 400 hours making something you can't eat, can't wear, and can't hunt with. Whoever carved it believed this object mattered more than 400 hours of anything else they could have done instead. The Sulawesi discovery pushed the timeline back even further than the Lion Man, and it did something else too. Researchers noted that early Indonesians may have been expressing spiritual, thinking about the bond between humans and animals long before the first art appeared in Europe, where scholars had long assumed the roots of modern religious culture could be traced. The assumption that Europe invented the spiritual imagination collapsed the moment this cave got properly dated. Homo sapiens reached Southeast Asia somewhere between 70,000 and 60,000 years ago, spreading into northern Europe roughly 20,000 years later, which means whatever produced this way of thinking about animals and humans traveled with our species out of Africa, rather than getting invented later in some particular region. This wasn't a local European habit. It was already built into how Homo sapiens thought before we'd even finished spreading across the planet. Europe holds its own dense cluster of these figures, and once you start looking, they show up almost everywhere ancient art survives at all. At Lascaux in France, a human figure wears a bird-like head or mask, dated to roughly 17,000 years old. At Les Trafres, in a chamber known as the Sanctuary, a painting called The Sorcerer depicts a half-human, half-stag figure dated to around 15,000 years old, alongside another theanthrope showing an upright creature with hooves instead of hands, horns, and a snout. At the Cave of Gabiu, an engraving shows a bison-headed human figure, also nicknamed the Sorcerer, and at Chauvet Cave, a half-human, half-bison creature carries that same nickname, dated to between 30,000 and 32,000 years old. 3 separate caves, separated by thousands of years, and 3 separate artists, apparently reaching for the exact same fusion between man and beast, independently, without coordination. This pattern doesn't stop in Europe or Indonesia. The San people of southern Africa depicted theanthropes in their rock shelters too, including an antelope-headed human wearing a skin cloak, likely representing a shaman, alongside images described as a flying boat, or an area of invisibility from which theanthropic figures emerge. Rock art in New Mexico shows snakes with human heads. Rock art found across Mexico and Texas shows humans with eagle wings. This theme runs across prehistoric rock art worldwide, spanning more than 20,000 years of continuous use across cultures that had no contact with each other whatsoever. Whatever explains this pattern, geography can't be the answer. Something about the human mind itself, wherever it happened to be standing on the planet, kept reaching for this exact same image. So what were people actually trying to show? One leading theory points straight at shamanism, and specifically at the altered states of consciousness shamans entered during ritual. Archaeologist David Lewis Lewis Williams proposes that trancing shamans fused themselves in their own minds with specific animals of power that they held a ritual relationship with. Trance states, whether induced through rhythmic drumming, chanting, extended fasting, or hallucinogenic plants, produce vivid and specific hallucinations across virtually every human culture that has studied them, including a recurring sensation of the body transforming, merging with an animal, or dissolving its boundaries entirely. If shamans across radically different cultures experienced structurally similar transformation sensations during trance independently, then radically different cultures painting structurally similar transformation imagery on their cave walls stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a shared biological experience translated into paint. One detail supports this theory in an oddly specific way. A cave painting of a rhinoceros at Chauvet includes curved red lines extending from its nose and mouth, meant to symbolize bleeding. San shamans in South Africa are known to suffer nosebleeds while in trance states, and nasal hemorrhages show up illustrated across numerous San rock paintings as a direct visual marker of that trance experience. That's not a generic artistic flourish. That's an artist encoding a specific, physically documented symptom of ritual trance directly into the image. A detail that only makes sense if the artist, or someone close to them, had actually gone through that exact experience and wanted to record it. The alternative theory doesn't compete with the shamanic explanation so much as sit alongside it. Sue O'Connor, an archaeologist at Australian National University, has suggested the Sulawesi hunting scene might not depict an actual hunt at all, but rather animistic beliefs about the relationship between people and animals, or a shamanic ritual captured directly in paint. Under this reading, the painting isn't a hunting record with some artistic embellishment layered on top. It's a religious scene wearing the disguise of a hunting scene, or possibly both readings sitting true at the same time, since the earliest religious thinking may never have separated the practical from the sacred the way modern minds automatically do. A separate but related theory treats these figures less as trance visions and more as totemic symbols, expressions of kinship between specific humans and specific animal species. Under this view, theanthropic art reflects a deep ecological spirituality in which humans saw themselves as part of an interconnected web of life rather than separate from it. A figure combining a lion's head with a human body may have embodied that animal's courage or authority, functioning as a totemic guide for the person or group associated with it. A community that depended entirely on specific animals for food, clothing, and tools might naturally come to see those animals not as separate resources sitting outside the human world, but as kin, ancestors, or spiritual partners folded into it. Whatever the precise explanation, one thing stays constant across every single interpretation on the table. Theanthropes occur in the folklore or narrative fiction of almost every modern society on record, and they are perceived as gods, spirits, or ancestral beings across religions worldwide. Every mythology you already know carries this exact fingerprint. Egypt's Anubis, jackal-headed. Greece's Minotaur, half-bull. Hindu Ganesha, elephant-headed. Norse tales of shapeshifters slipping between human and wolf. None of these stories got invented from nothing in the last few thousand years. They're the modern surface layer, sitting on top of an idea that stretches back at least 44,000 years to a cave wall in Sulawesi where someone first painted a hunter with the snout of an animal, and to a cluster of European caves where sorcerers wore antlers and bison horns on stone walls tens of thousands of years before anyone wrote a single word down. Step back, and this changes how you should read the entire history of religion and myth. We tend to imagine mythology as something that arrived relatively late, alongside cities, temples, and organized priesthoods. The cave evidence says otherwise. Researchers studying the Sulawesi describe the 44,000-year-old artwork as possibly the oldest evidence for the human ability to imagine the existence of supernatural beings altogether. Before agriculture, before writing, before permanent settlements of any kind, humans were already standing at the boundary between the human world and the animal world, and already imagining what it might look like to cross it. That boundary crossing image didn't stay confined to one cave, one culture, or one era. It followed our species everywhere we went, surfacing independently again and again for tens of thousands of years, which suggests it was never really an invention at all. It might be one of the oldest ideas the human mind has ever produced, older than the wheel, older than the written word, older than almost everything else we consider the foundation of civilization.